And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus, 1:08 in the afternoon on this Monday, Cinco de Mayo, and happy Monday to everybody. Hopefully everybody got out to enjoy a beautiful weekend across much of the area. A little dry with the elevated fire risk out there, and that's continuing today as well. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette, boy, what a week for planting this week. I mean, the mild weather, soil temperatures coming up.
Oh, everybody's ready to go.
Yeah.
Lots of, the reports I've had with folks are anywhere from all my sugar beets are in up at Mayville to yesterday was the first day to go over to the southwest of Findlay to down towards Wahpeton, et cetera. We probably have all the corn in, the majority of the soybeans already. So it's really across the board. There's a guy out spraying this morning in north central South Dakota. He let me know what was happening in his field. So it's a variety of things, and that's what we would expect for the first full week of May.
Right.
We're going to hit her hard.
Well, and I've had people ask me, "Are we done with our freezing temperatures?" Yeah, we're done with we're done with the hard freeze. Now there could be some areas of the extreme northeastern corner, northwest Minnesota, they might get a little light frost.
Yeah, a little light frost could still happen easily.
Yeah, but hard freeze, it looks like it's over. In fact, we've got a pretty mild-looking forecast all the way through this week and even into the upcoming weekend. So today we're looking at, again, that elevated fire risk up and down the valley here with breezy conditions out of the south, and it's mild. We're already at 80 degrees, making it up to about 83 to 85 today, with those south winds 10 to 25 and a little gusty at times. Tonight, clear skies, upper 40s, and for Tuesday, breezy conditions out of the north as a cool front swings through. That'll drop our temperatures about 10 degrees into the low 70s. Some spots may even be held to the upper 60s, depending on how much cloud cover comes in. There's going to be a line of showers stretching from western part of the state through about Bismarck, and then they're going to fizzle out as they head eastward on Tuesday. So it depends how much cloud cover we get out of that, but definitely cooler tomorrow. And then lighter winds, more sunshine on Wednesday, low 70s. And then we stay in the 70s and 80s heading into the upcoming weekend with mainly dry conditions. And this afternoon's weather is brought to you by Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists. And we're going to be getting out in the field, it looks like, later this week, hopefully.
That's our chance. I would imagine we're going to get a message from our farmer, Jim, and his son, Michael, to let us know exactly what's going to be happening. And then just in the anticipation of that, I've been keeping an extra set of clothes and work boots in my pickup just in case. Never know when that call is going to come. Mm-hmm. Shortly thereafter, we will make sure that our signs are up so people can find the field, southwest of Gardner. If you travel that area and you know where the junction of County Road 11 and County Road 34 are in Cass County, we're a mile south of that on the east side of the road. So looking forward to putting that wheat in the ground. I think our farmers are more excited about that than I am, to be honest.
They want to get out there.
Right. Everybody wants to get in the field.
Yeah. I thought I would see traveling to Omaha and back over last weekend to the weekend. I thought I'd see more farmers out in the field. I know they got quite a bit of rain down in South Dakota, so that might be holding them up.
But I'm sure
there was quite a few fields that weren't even tilled yet.
That's very likely, especially if they've had some rainfall. But there's folks down that region that are done.
Yeah.
And you get to northern Illinois, they're pretty much planted. A big chunk of Iowa is really mostly planted, so wherever they can be anyhow. So again, it's always variable and spotty, right? And
sure.
You got those folks that are like, wait, this is my last field, because it may be something that they wanted to plant later. It could be a later sunflower crop. Or did that field just get tiled and they're waiting for that field to settle a little bit before they go plant? I saw a field to the southwest of Hillsboro on Saturday, and I could see the big tile rolls out there. So they're waiting to put those in the ground. There's a lot of action yet.
Good.
A lot of room for time, or a lot of time for things to get done.
Well, at least they're not being held out of the field due to weather.
Not
for the
at this
most
point.
part, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw several messages from people yesterday that said it is go time. So you get into that Hannaford, Cooperstown area, I think they're really lighting it on fire. One concern I did get just this morning was from a rancher around Golden Valley, and he pointed out that with the 80s and 90 degree temperatures that's coming their way this week, that's just going to burn them up. They just barely got moisture. They were hoping to see their pastures recuperate some with spring rain. This is going to be tougher on them. Had a West Central Minnesota farmer this morning email me saying, are we still considered in a drought? Well, if you look at the drought monitor, there is a little bit of an elbow that comes through this area into Minnesota, and the drought monitor was updated as of Friday. So at this point, where we're at right now is not necessarily considered much for a drought. We're certainly not severe in the drought on the drought monitor.
Right. No, not even close.
Yeah. And we don't have a lot of subsoil moisture. We're going to use everything we've got. But you've said June likely could look to be a bit more rainy.
Yeah. In fact, we'll get rainier, I guess you could say, if that's we'll get rainier as we head towards the middle of the month here. But yeah, June definitely does look a little wetter, which is good. And yeah, taking a look at that drought monitor map right now, and again, this was released last week, so they'll be updating that later this week. There is some moderate drought conditions, as you said, Bridgette, from the far southeastern corner of the state through west central Minnesota. But the majority of the eastern half of the state, actually, we're fine. It's once you get west of Bismarck up towards Watford City, Williston areas, those areas are in
much more
are
severe.
in severe drought. Yeah,
Yep.
severe to even a pocket of extreme out there
Yes.
as well. So,
Yep.
But the drought conditions have been shrinking over the last 30 days.
They've gotten a bit better.
Yeah, and I think, after a near average May in terms of rainfall, I think we might be a little bit below normal on rainfall. I think we'll start to catch up on that in June.
Yeah, that's very likely, which will come right in time. I just heard anybody who cuts hay and runs a baler go, oh, because you want dry conditions when you're baling hay, right?
Right.
That's your best forage quality. So it's really a balancing act, and Mother Nature will test us this year on what that act looks like, specifically when it comes to how much moisture do we get, when do we get it, et cetera. Last fall we had a really dry fall overall, and we didn't see a lot of recovery.
Not in
Since
the
then.
winter, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
It'll be all right. We'll wind up, I bet, before the summer. I still think those areas west of Bismarck and up into the Bakken area. Later next week, we are going to get into a wetter period later next week, but that looks like it'll focus itself out in the western third of the state, which is good news for
Which is
them.
good.
Yeah.
I think of it this way. We always plant a crop. Are we always profitable? Oh, I didn't say that, but we always plant a crop.
Right.
So that's really a key focus that folks want to get. They want to get planted. They know that there has been an aid package that was brought out to the tune of $10 billion. A lot of those checks have been hitting the mail. That's helping cover operating costs, seed costs, inputs right now are up. We got a lot to watch as we go through this season, whether it's if anything changes tariff-wise, what happens with some of our trade agreements with other countries that affect our inputs as well. So it'll be a lot to see what happens. One of the countries that we are looking at doing more with is actually India. And if you think about population-wise, India and China aren't that far off as far as the number of people that they feed.
Mm-hmm.
But as a trading partner, China was significantly higher than India. That may change. And we'll see what that starts to look like here in the short term. India buys things from us, fresh fruits like apples are a big deal. Also, they buy grains. When the Russian-Ukrainian deal was going on, well, I shouldn't say was, is still going on. But when it initially started, there were a lot of countries that were scrambling. Where were they going to buy grain because so much uncertainty was happening in that region? India came to us for a lot more grain. Mm-hmm. Also, pulses, peas, sunflowers, those types of crops, canola, that is a big deal for India. Vegetable oils from across the U.S. was another one that they were looking at. So it will have an impact on us if we can start to see an increase with India for trade, which would be a great thing for us.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And we have a returning guest today.
Oh, yes,
I think a lot of people are familiar with.
Marcia Van Leer is going to join us today. Marcia is probably on the road somewhere today, which I would not be surprised, only because this is the day that if you are in the crop input business, you are busy. You got things going on. And with Marcia's product line from Gowan USA, when it comes to products like Fargo, Vita, Sonaland, and others, we want to talk through some of the tips and tricks for doing a better job with those this spring. We're all in a hurry right now. We can get this crop in. We can't forget to layer those modes of actions. So, yeah, we're going to visit about that with Marcia when we return. So we'll be back. Don't forget, if you want to call in, you can. The JLA phone line, 701-293-9000. And just like everybody out in the field today, it is go time for everyone, including here at Weather and Ag in Focus. That means we are looking forward to getting our wheat in the ground. Now, we have some sponsors that are a part of that project. One of them is ND Estate Services. It's their job to take that very complicated process of estate planning and educate you to try to get things to go much smoother, to avoid probate and so much more. In fact, one of the things I talked about earlier on the morning shows today was the death tax and how detrimental that would be to a farm with estimated land values of well over, at least $1 million. I would tell you it's significantly higher than that. And then you add in the assets of equipment and so much more. And so talking to Mark Wagner at over ND Estate Services can help you sort through that. Also, the team at Thor Buildings, they want to give a shout out to all of you who are farming and ranching right now. One, stay safe. But as you are thinking ahead, looking for some post-frame construction, they're the ones that can help build that right-sized building for your equipment or your livestock that is crucial to your success. Our guest today is one of our sponsors as well, and that is Marcia Van Leer with Gowan USA. Marcia, our guys here are very curious where you're headed to. There's been lots of questions. Where is she going right now? Hopefully we have her. There she is. There she is.
Can you get here? Okay. I was actually just in the area today. I'm traveling out west here later this week. I'll be heading out to western North Dakota. Even Wednesday, coming home on
hang on, Marcia. We're
today
gonna
and tomorrow.
hang on, Marcia. We're gonna try to get your signal a little bit more solid. It's pretty glitchy right now. It's cutting in and out. So we'll have Addison work with you to see if he can get that to be a little bit more smoothly. We'll see what we can do. But that does happen. Sometimes we just have to go to audio only with a phone call because it happens to me all the time. It feels like when I'm out on the road.
Well, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's hard to get a signal.
Well, and so for Gowan USA, Marcia covers a territory that includes the Red River Valley of Minnesota, all of North Dakota, and well into Montana. So she said something about going west later this week. Sometimes going west means Minot, and you can start to have some difficulty with a signal over there. So if we need, we can always get Marcia to come in just by a call-in as well, and sometimes that's better than trying to use video while we're doing this. So we're going to see what we can do with Marcia. One of the things, though, when it comes to her product line with Gowan, she is big in the dry bean market, and dry beans in North Dakota, that's one of the crops where we rank number one. There is something called bioavailable iron, and it really relates to the dry edible beans we raise here in the state. There is truly an iron deficiency problem with most adults. I don't know. How do you feel about yours?
I've heard that. I don't have a problem with it, but I've heard a lot of, especially females, right?
Yeah. Way to go, Popeye.
Yeah.
Keeping although I've been told that is a myth, by the way, the spinach thing. So women of childbearing years and children are often found deficient in iron. So there's a difference, though, between having iron and what's called bioavailable. That means that it's the micronutrient that can be absorbed and used in your metabolism. Because here's the way this works. The available iron, is a component of hemoglobin and myoglobin, and that transfers your oxygen from your lungs to the tissues in your body. It's important for your healthy growth, especially, again, back to children and childbearing women. So one of the things to keep in mind is if you are currently looking at how to improve your diet, dry edible beans is a big take in that. Now, we raise a fair amount of Great Northern beans here in this region. They're the white bean. Sometimes they're called a cannelli bean, and you can use them in like a ham and bean soup or use them as side dishes. Also, pinto beans, which are frequently used as a chili bean. Those are all high in the bioavailable iron, which is great to be able to use for kids. Use them as side dish. It's Cinco de Mayo. Maybe you want to have that side dish of beans to go along with the fact that, hey, it's also beef month. So maybe you need to have beef and beans. Put them in a burrito. Call them something great. This could be your menu planning show for today.
And most people might not realize that are beans a vegetable or are beans a fruit?
Okay. They are considered, hold on, let me think this through. I think we're going to consider those a vegetable. Why would we put them in the fruit? Oh, because of the seed inside the pod.
Yeah.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know. I was, because you've heard of the old saying, beans, a wonderful fruit, the more you eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's called the musical fruit.
Yeah.
For the same
So,
reason.
and I always thought that. I'm like, I wonder if they just got that saying wrong, because how in the world are beans
Yeah.
considered a fruit? But
If you
yeah.
logically walk through that, that would be that definition because it has the seed inside. Although there's one fruit that has its seed on the outside of it. You know this one.
Yes, I do.
They're in everybody's favorite part of Grandma's garden.
Oh. Why am I drawing a blank? I can see the picture of it.
Strawberries, because
Yes,
the little black
geez.
seeds are the fruit. So, yes, more things to consider as we look ahead for what we're putting in our menus for the summer. So, here you go. It's Cinco de Mayo. We've just talked about strawberries for your margarita, and we managed to make sure you had a beef and bean burrito for the rest of the day. Look at that. Suddenly we're a cooking show.
There you go.
I can't believe the Food Network didn't pick us up yet. All right, so those are just some of the things to consider. Addison, do you know if we have a good signal, or maybe not? It looks like he's working to get that covered with Marcia, so we'll get her on shortly.
Looks like she's calling in. So
No
yeah, we'll get her on.
worries, we'll
Yeah.
get that covered. One of the things that's going on as well right now, Midwest Dairy is partnering with pizza companies to boost milk sales by over 3 million pounds. Pop quiz, since we do a lot of trivia here. How many pounds of milk make 1 pound of cheese?
How many pounds of milk?
Yeah.
Let me hold on 1 second. Let me think about
Put the
this.
mouse down. Stop typing.
How many pounds of milk equals? No, how many gallons of milk?
No, pounds, because you can actually weigh milk in pounds.
Okay, equals 1
pound of cheese.
Oh,
And we're
boy.
thinking pizza, so this is going to be specifically mozzarella.
I'm gonna say it's a 2-to-1.
Actually, it's a 10-to-1. You're going to use
Whoa.
10 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cheese. Now, I don't know what the weight of milk is per gallon. That's something I would have to figure out. I haven't gone to Google machine that one yet. But when you think about it, one of the ways that we are mostly consuming milk these days really is through cheese. And when we talked about India just a little bit earlier, that's one of the ways that we are shipping a lot of exports to India has to do with dairy products. So you have companies locally like Pizza Ranch, Godfather's, and Marco's Pizza. They are doing pizza partnerships, and they're really increasing the amount of dairy that people are consuming. Granted, it's on the pizza, and that's also helping a lot of milk sales in the region at the same time. So we are continuing to see an upward trend, not just in fluid drinking milk, but in other dairy products.
So a gallon of milk weighs about 8.6 pounds.
Okay.
Now minus the plastic, but
right.
yeah.
You're always going to look for
Yeah.
a tare weight.
Sure.
But you got to understand, liquids weigh different things, right? Water doesn't weigh the same as milk does. When we talk about inputs like liquid fertilizer, there's always a difference in what that weighs per gallon as well.
Mhm.
So, yes, those things can vary. I know people are thinking, what? But I did promise one of our morning shows today I will do a better job. I'll get a weights and measures sheet for them because we weigh some things in, we measure dry beans in pounds, sunflower in pounds, but we measure wheat, corn, and others in bushels. And there's a big difference in why.
Right.
So I'll make a list so we know what that list looks like. All right. How about we do our news break, but when we come back, we bring our guest in with Marcia, and we'll have a chance to visit then so we can get everybody's modes of action out in the field carefully and accurately. We'll do that right after this. Welcome back to Weather Nag in Focus, where it's not just me on the road. Oftentimes it's our guests, whomever they may be and wherever they may be. And so today, our question is, Marcia Van Leer, now I think we have a clear signal to you. Where are you? The guys want to know.
Actually, I'm in eastern North Dakota right now. I am heading out west here, leaving Wednesday, and I'll be back on Friday. So today I'm really kind of northwest Minnesota is where I'm at.
Nice.
Eastern, northeast North Dakota. So
where they
close to
have
home.
they have mostly paved roads, but terrible phone service is what I can see from Minnesota. Okay, so
Yeah, you know.
all right, Marcia, you and I were making a list of things we should talk about today. One is called Fargo, and we're not talking about the town. Can you give us a little background on that? Because, hey, wheat acres are up for planting this year. Somebody might have an interest.
Wheat acres are up significantly, and this will be my probably fourth or fifth conversation today about Fargo. So yay!
Yay! Well practiced. Woo!
So Fargo is a wild oat, downy brome. It's really a grass inhibitor. It is a group 15, so it's really a shoot inhibitor. Let's keep in mind Fargo is old chemistry. I mean, it's older than you and I probably combined.
Yeah, I was going to say
So
it was old chemistry when I started in this industry 30 years ago. So if that puts it in perspective for you, but it still works. That's the thing. As a product, it is still very effective in the field.
it does. It is, it's probably one of my biggest molecules up in this area, which is just probably mind blowing when you start thinking about some of the chemistry that we have out there. The unique thing with Fargo, so it is a pre-emerge. There's a wide application used for the grower, so they can either impregnate urea fertilizer, put it out on the field, work it in, or they can spray it out on the field, work it in, or they can seed their wheat field and then come back over the top and spray the Fargo and then work it in. If you notice a theme, it's work it in.
Okay, so some questions there. First things first. Because you have some farmers who are listening are going to say, wait, you said spray it on. Didn't it used to be a granule? Are you still offering both formulations as Gowan, or is it only one formulation that you would be focusing on, and that would be the liquid?
No, we have both dry and liquid. My thing with when it comes to dry versus liquid in the spring, so the dry version is called Avidex.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the granular formulation. And then the liquid version is called Fargo.
Okay.
My experience is I would much prefer to have liquid put out in the spring because we don't have to have the time for it to move off of that clay particle. We've talked about this, with like Sonalan and Treflan in the past, where it needs time to move off of that clay particle. And we don't necessarily get that time in the spring. So I would much rather have growers use liquid in the spring. We do have some growers that use dry, and go for it. They've had really good luck with it. More power to them. It's just me coming from my retail experience. I would much rather go with liquid because, where time is of an essence, so we need to get going.
And Marcia, do we need rain to activate that, or does it matter if it's dry, or it depends?
So we don't necessarily need rain to activate it.
Hang on.
Sorry,
there it is. There you go. Got to get rid of that phone call.
We need
Happens.
rain to work it in. We need mechanical incorporation.
So really,
mechanical incorporation. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so finish what you're saying about mechanical incorporation, because that does beg the question to go along with it of application, right? So wheat can't be up before incorporating that type of thing. So folks need to be clear about how that works as well.
Right. So when I tell guys that they're going to seed their wheat and then they're going to spray Fargo over the top, what I tell them is we want to, seed the wheat the next day, go out at a quart per acre, no more, no less, definitely no less. Um, we want to go out at 15, 20 gallons an acre of water because it is a pre-emerge, so coverage is key. And we want to make sure that right behind that sprayer, they're coming back with like a harrow or a vertical till or a sulfur type rolling baskets type product. The key with Fargo is we do not need a deep incorporation. We need that within that top half inch of the topsoil because, historically that's where most of our wild oats are at. They're in
Exactly.
that top half inch, maybe a little bit deeper than that.
So when you said earlier, we were talking about the liquid Fargo that you said you can impregnate it on fertilizer. What's the carrier for that? Because I'm just going to go back in memory where we constantly wanted to use at least a minimum of 200 pounds of fertilizer as carrier for it. Do you have some advice for the guy who is currently in the fertilizer plant trying to mix this batch?
So when we're going out at it, it's not so much a carrier, it's the poundage like you were talking about. 200 pounds really is minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I'd really like to see that 250, maybe 275, and that's of a complete blend.
Okay.
Obviously urea is going to be the biggest part of that, maybe some AMS in there. And the reasoning why is because we don't want to get too tacky. Otherwise, I remember back in the day of impregnating some dry edible fertilizer with some Sonolan. That was not awesome, and I used a ton of kitty litter basically to help dry it up and be able to carry it through with the spreader. Because that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to be sitting there plugging air tubes and then having other issues out there for the floater operators.
When you got a machine plugged up, it is a bad situation, by the way. Just saying.
And Marcia, can you explain to us
yes, so when you get the phone call.
And Marcia, can you explain to us what Vita is?
So Vita is a PPO chemistry. It is a burn down chemistry. We use it in front of wheat, corn, soybeans. You're gonna mix it with your 2,4-Ds or your glyphosate, whatever you're using in that burn down rotation. The unique thing with Vita is it has a very short half-life. So you can spray it one day and the next day you can seed right away.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on. Let that sink in for just a moment. Because if you're doing the tank mixing with glyphosate or 2,4-D, would you follow the most restrictive label in that situation?
Yes.
Okay.
That would make the most sense. Now, we've had some guys push it. You know how that always goes. I do not recommend using Vita by itself, because we want to get multiple modes of action out on that field. So where Vita's key is it actually works really well with like a glyphosate or even like a Liberty burn down. You're going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, okay.
I can just see by your actions.
Because when you said that about a PPO and you're doing this for burn down, I was going to ask about your specific weed targets when you're doing this, because you're talking glyphosate, glufosinate, 2,4-D, but it's a PPO. We're talking total contact. So really, it's not even a specific weed spectrum, right? You're just looking at, cleaning everything up.
No, because Vita's really good on specific weeds.
Okay.
So Vita is really good on like puffball kochia. In the words of one of your friends, Crush Kochia.
Kill it all. Kill it all.
It has really good activity on wild buckwheat.
Okay.
It is pretty much death on wild buckwheat. It has some fairly decent activity on dandelion. The key thing with Vita though is, and this is where we get into a little bit of an issue when we're tank mixing with Roundup, because people want to use less water with Roundup or glyphosate,
right,
than what they want to with Vita. Well, Vita, we want more water.
So it's more of a fit for
because
glufosinate then.
Right.
Okay.
Plus, it likes high temperature and high humidity.
Oh, now I see what you're saying. Okay, yes, that's going to be a good fit in that situation.
So if there is anybody that's using glufosinate as a burn down, this is where Vita is really key. I don't recommend using it in crop. It is labeled in crop for wheat, corn, and soybeans. The reason why I don't is because it is a PPO, so it does burn, it does speckle the crop, it makes it not look pretty, and farmers are really proud of their crops, and I understand that, so they want them to look pretty.
Yes, and we don't want to lose yield. Now, when you look at that Vita, is that a good fit if you're a no-till situation?
Yes.
Okay.
It is a very good fit for that no-till situation. Where we see Vita used quite a bit is, basically west of, say, Jamestown, that line.
Okay.
And then out west to, Dickinson, Williston, into Montana, South Dakota, Colorado. That's where we really see Vita used.
As you talked about Vita and Fargo, do we need to think about adjuvants? You've talked about rates, water, timing, but what about adjuvants to improve any of the activity in the field?
So with Fargo, we do not need an adjuvant with Fargo just because it is a pre-emerge. And the one thing I'm going to just key guys up with Fargo is let's manage expectations. So it is a pre-emerge. It is not going to be 100%. It's not going to have 100% weed kill.
Okay.
We're looking at about an 80%, wild oat control is what we're looking at with Fargo, and it being a group 1 and group 2 resistant wild oats. We're still going to have to come out with more chemistry to clean up what's left out in the field.
Well,
I always try to have this conversation to manage expectations.
well, what you're talking about is layering modes of action, right? We continually have to do that.
Yes.
We used to be able to plant wheat. We could spray something and move on. But even for wheat, much like corn and soybeans, that has changed. And like you said, we need to manage those expectations. So as you're doing that, what are some of the things that you're reminding people about to set those expectations accurately?
Well, so the one thing, when we sit there and we talk about Fargo and we get down to, you're adding another mode of action out in that field. So we're adding another cost out to that farm. And what I tend to tell growers is we don't want to use Fargo over all of their acres in 1 year. So what I like to do is let's take your worst 20% of your acres. Let's spray Fargo on there. Next year, we're going to do the next 20%. That way we're taking that cost across the whole farm, as opposed to absorbing it all in 1 year.
Okay.
And like I said, with expectations, we're not going to get 20%. Or we're not going to get, 100% control. So you are going to see some wild oats come a little bit later. You are going to see some wild oats come through. But what I like to tell retailers and growers is, we'll go out and I'll start walking the field and we're going to do a scrape back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pocket knife or whatever, and I'm going to scrape back that top, half inch of that topsoil, and I'll see dead or dying wild oats, and I know the chemistry is working.
That's vitally important.
It is, because when the growers start seeing that, they're like, oh, okay, now I understand. Now it is working. We kind of got spoiled in the land of post herbicides and getting 100% kill,
right?
Or cleaning up the fields and stuff, and that just doesn't happen with Fargo.
Marcia is always a wealth of information when she joins us. This is one of the things. Got to understand, when Marcia and I and a couple other gals go to lunch together, these are the conversations we have, and you should see the looks from other tables. Let's just say that much.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Are there any margaritas involved?
From time to time. I mean, it is Cinco de Mayo. All right. So we have someone who was too shy to call in on the JLA insurance phone line. For all the others, you can at 701-293-9000. And needed to let you know, Marcia, that your house sitter who's gone hunting and fishing with you by the name of Hayden, well, Hayden's mom is one of our morning show hosts, Janae, and she just thought it was pretty awesome that we have you on air today. So there you go. For those who don't know it, Marcia loves to hunt pheasant.
Oh yes. Actually, yes. My husband has taken him out muskie fishing quite a bit,
Yes. So,
and I think he was texting about golf questions over my head.
Marcia, thank you so much for taking the time to find a solid phone signal for talking about Vita and Fargo and Avidex, and we will continue that conversation throughout the summer. You have a fabulous rest of your day.
You guys too. Have a good day.
Thanks, Marcia. All right, when we come back, we'll have a quick recap of the weather, and Bridgette will have a couple of ag topics to hit on as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Monday afternoon. Temperatures outside right now in the low 80s. If you're wondering what the record is, it's in the 90s. So we're not going to quite approach that. It is pretty breezy out there. We've got winds gusting over 30 right now out of the south with the humidity of 20%. That's it. Very dry air mass in place. And thus the reason for the red flag warnings of elevated fire risk. I know there's still fires burning across the state, Bridgette. And, boy, I mean, the rain that we had last week helped in some areas, but not everybody got it. So it looks like next week, the central and western part of the state, not so much in the east, but the central and western part of the state, will benefit with some much-needed moisture next week.
They will look forward to that.
Yeah, and it looks like about, in general, a half inch to an inch, with some areas a little bit more.
I believe we heard at the midday news that there is a wildfire in the Turtle Mountains right now. So north central North Dakota, northeast North Dakota.
And it's been pretty. Now they're not technically in drought conditions there.
Technically not, but there's all that dry plant material out there. So when you talked about low humidity, just like when Marcia was on the phone with us or online with us, and we were talking about what you're going to spray it with a product like hers called Vita, that it's going to work really well for a burn down. She said glufosinate. Right now, if we were using glufosinate on a day where we have such low humidity, it's not going to work very well. We have sunshine, but the humidity actually is a bigger factor. What can overcome that glufosinate not working as well? 20 gallons of water. The bright sunshine will help. Having these warmer temperatures will help. Good coverage using the right nozzle, but without humidity, you don't always have that leaf cuticle opening up to absorb the way it should. So that will make a difference for some folks if they look back and say, I sprayed that day and it should have worked. Well, low humidity is a factor.
Yeah.
3 years ago. Gosh darn it. What year was it? Was it 2 or 3 summers ago when we had super low humidity for most of June, and we actually saw a lot of failures in glufosinate as far as activity on the plants.
Right.
Got to keep that in mind. So also keep in mind, if you are not yet in contact with Chris Sherman at Tech Support Farm, make sure to give him a call, because he is making sure that not only are your fields performing well, that's your job, but he's making sure all of your password protection is taken care of, your security, so you are not losing out on situations where you have scammers, so much more. Whenever he's on air with us, it just scares me a little bit. Like, he says information that gets clipped out of your personal emails that you don't even think about and then gets used to hack your systems. And if you're a farm or agribusiness, this is a big deal. Most farms and agribusinesses do not report when they have malware, ransomware, and others. And the average cost for recouping your identity or your information is about $80,000. Nobody has an extra $80,000 laying around just waiting to be used for such an occasion.
Man.
So please make sure that you give him a call. And again, that's Chris Sherman over at techsupportfarm.com. It May is Beef Month, as we talked about just a little bit earlier. With weather like this, let's take advantage of that, put some burgers on.
Good grilling weather, no doubt.
May is also Mental Health Month, and we have a strong emphasis for our farmers and ranchers because, as we've talked about, prices, whether it's your input costs, your commodity prices, wildfires, weather, the stress of getting that crop planted,
and
it's all mounting.
You're not getting much sleep this time of the year
because
you're out in the field. And
if you have a solid 10 days like this of good weather and no breakdowns, you can get a lot of your crop planted, if not all of it. But the no breakdowns things, nobody can say that's going to be
always
easy.
happens,
Something
right?
happens. And so we know that burnout is real, and we just want to encourage everyone that if you are feeling that stress and that concern, number one, make sure you visit and talk with someone. Number two, look out for each other. If you happen to stop, you're the equipment guy delivering parts, maybe ask how your folks are doing just to make sure that they're hanging in there, because it's important that all of us make it to next year as well.
No doubt. No doubt.
I just happened to look over your shoulder and I see one of our murder chickens out there patrolling, one of our Canadian geese. So you can tell that it's a nice day when they're not just hanging tight right up against the building.
Right. Hey, have you mowed your grass yet? I know we talked about.
We did this weekend.
Yeah, and boy, everything really greened up. I can
Yes.
tell the allergies are kicking in too with everything starting to bloom. But that's okay. Enjoy this nice week of weather. It looks like a dry, warm one. Enjoy it. Don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.